Street Fighter 6 Animation, and why does it suck? Now, this is kind of a clickbaity title, obviously. I don't think it completely sucks. Obviously, even some of the gameplay animation is pretty good. Even fine. Degrees of fine and okay and kind of cool, right? But why does this suck overall? So let's go over, I'm going to just go over some housekeeping and basically just talk a little bit about my experience and why I feel so strongly about this. So I am a professional animator, professional CG animator for over 9 years now, coming up to 10 next year. And I've worked in my early career, I worked in TV animation for kids cartoons, transitioned over to more adult, or not more adult, but more like teenage level shows, went into VFX and worked on a few films. And then I jumped into games over the last couple of years, and now currently I'm working on a game that is a sci-fi VR game called Journey to Foundation, and it's going to be released shortly in the next couple of months. So look forward to that on your Quest and your PSVR. But yeah, so I have a great diverse experience of working with motion capture, working with keyframe animation, and doing many different styles of cartoony, somewhat realistic, all that sort of stuff. So when I notice animation is not up to par for especially a company like Capcom, who has been known for doing amazing animations in their early work, like Third Strike, even the Super Turbo Street Fighter 2 days, doing amazing animation. You know, I see that to be a problem, right? And I want a company that was known for something great to continue to do great and in fact do better. So when I see regression in, you know, style, quality, polish, all that sort of stuff, I get offended a little bit, you know, because these guys inspired me. So I just want to say I am very excited for Street Fighter 6 in general. I'm a little disappointed in the music, not my kind of flavor. I want more melodic themes like the themes you're hearing right now. But I'm sure it's going to be enjoyable in the background, and even while playing the demo, I have enjoyed the music as ambient music, so totally fine. But let's get started. Street Fighter 6. Why does it suck? The animation. So I want to make the first distinction here that gameplay animation is what I'm critiquing, because that is the problem I have with Street Fighter 6 animation. So gameplay animation is basically any animation that is influenced by the player's input. So when you move your character around, when you jump, when you backdash, when you perform a special move, when you perform a normal attack, right? Anything like that is gameplay animation. So what wouldn't count as gameplay animation is stuff like... So we have normal attacks here, so you can see in Street Fighter 5, for example, this would be a gameplay animation thing, because two players are interacting or single players interacting, and you're going to get a normal to come out, right? So what wouldn't fall under this category is stuff like supers, because the camera changes, the camera cuts, and there's basically nothing you can do to influence the game state in this current animation. So basically, because it's playing a super animation, that's a cinematic thing, once it plays out, then you can finish, and then you can go back and start playing the game again. Anything like character intros, character cutscenes, like, you know, when in Street Fighter 6 at the beginning, when they're coming down through like the lobby and the street, and then they're doing like the versus matchup screen, that's all not gameplay, right? So things like that, basically, I'm not going to be addressing. And honestly, everything in Street Fighter 6 that is not gameplay looks amazing. So all the cinematic supers look excellent. All the cutscenes look great. The World Tour stuff looks awesome. I think there's some problems with the lighting and texture polish that could be better. But overall, looking really solid, looking really good. So not here to discuss that. So I found that so far there is 3 main issues in Street Fighter 6's animation. And what they are spacing, anticipation, and appeal. So I'll go through what each one of those are, just so you guys understand what I'm talking about. So what is spacing? So spacing is usually associated with timing when it comes to animation. So timing is how long an action will take, and spacing is what you choose to show within those amount of frames. So video games are usually 60 frames per second. Film is usually 24 to 30 frames per second, right? And when you go less, you usually go into the realm of 2D animation, where you do drawings on every other frame or every certain amount of frames, right? That's why cheap animation is usually done over a shorter amount of frames or a longer amount of frames, because they do less drawings, right? So for example, this ball here is moving the same distance at the same speed, so it's taking this many frames to get there on both of these, but they feel different because of the spacing. So these are the drawings that they decide to show, right? So if you show these drawings like this, then it changes the feeling of it. So without even changing the shape of this, the sphere or the circle, you're able to change the feeling just by placing where the drawings are along the line of time, right? So if you do it evenly spaced here, it's going to look a bit boring, a bit flat. But if you change it to like this, it's going to be a lot more dynamic, a bit more punchy, and much more effective and appealing to look at, right? So a good example of this is all throughout the game, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, one of the best pixel animations you can study because the animation is amazing. It's on the realm of stylistic realism, which I think is what peak Street Fighter is in terms of art style. And a good example is Ryu's crouch medium kick, right? Looks amazing, very powerful, feels good to look at, feels good to do. And it's important to do things like this in games because when you animate something that is a common thing you'll see, because you'll see this normal very often, right? You'll see Ken use it a lot, you'll see Ryu, Kuma, and Sean, and it's all part of footsies, right? This button is universally used in footsies, right? So you're gonna see this a lot, so it better look damn good, okay? Now what I've done is I've broken down the frames. So these are the anticipation frames. This is him winding his leg back. This is the leg coming up to lift to poke, basically. And then this is kind of a moving hold, which is a thing where you basically keep them in the same pose, but you keep the motion going slightly. So that's why you see his foot being down here, and then you see his foot being up here, right? And then he's going to go instantly into this overstretch pose. You can see the smear frames here on the foot, these like action lines here, and the foot going past where the kick is, right? And then going back into the actual hit pose, right? So he's basically hitting at this frame. He's not hitting at this frame. This is basically like an overshoot, which is essentially going past an action and then recovering. Because that's what happens when you do things fast. When you punch something, if you don't hit an actual wall and you try to stop it, you see there's like a slight ricochet in my hand here. It's exactly the same feeling. So, and this line at the top here, I think you guys can probably see it, is where the timing is. So the timing is very tight near the end, which gives it power. And that's the same thing I was mentioning with the spacing. So there's basically 5 frames of dynamic spacing with various timing across the animation in terms of the pose changes, right? Now, in Street Fighter 6, Ryu's crouch medium kick, the capture here kind of lost some of the frames here, so it actually looks a lot snappier than it does in the game. But it's actually the same normal and the same idea in terms of what the animation is doing because they're referencing Third Strike's crouch medium kick, right? So I thought this was a good option for comparison. So there's 6 frames that are evenly spaced, unfortunately, because as you can see, the differences between these main poses are very even. The amount of time between the frames, there are frames in between these, but they're basically from the interpolation of the animation itself in CG, right? Because in 2D, you only see what you draw, right? But in CG, you can interpolate the frames, so there's like in-betweens of basically the motion going. And if you see it in real time, you'll see how slow it goes through the whole thing, right? So you can see the anticipation is very similar, right? We have the moving hold is quite similar as well. The big difference to where it falls flat is that instead of having the tight spacing at the end, where it's a big change in motion, his foot, you can kind of see it here, is basically underneath the opponent's S here, right? And when it sticks out, there's not much room for it to shoot out and create that power, right? Because when you see the difference in spacing and pose changes, that creates power. So unfortunately for Ryu's crouch medium kick in Street Fighter 6, it's very even and flat, and you're not going to feel that much power. Even if the pose communicates power itself, you won't feel it when you're watching it or using it, right? Obviously stuff like hit effects works, obviously things like screen shake, hit stun, that sort of thing can emphasize that, but it starts with the animation, because without the animation you don't have a good foundation, right? And what happens is if you do this a lot in your game, and you also combine it with speeding up the animation, that's how in Mortal Kombat games or in NRS titles, you'll see a lot of moves look way faster than humanly possible. So they feel like they're keyframed animation, like that a person went through and did it by hand, but it's actually the result of speeding up motion capture and cutting frames out and making it look like this. So the reason why you see this is because this is the result of even spacing. So this is the same amount of frames to get to these motions, but they're just sped up. So that's why you don't feel the power that much. It just looks like a little leg poke instead of an actual kick to the leg, right? Big downside. Too far. Now, anticipation. What is anticipation? So anticipation is basically the premonition or the indication of action that is coming. So the anticipation pose here, so if the character is going to jump, you need to show a character winding up and showing that action coming, like where is that energy coming from, and then the energy coming out of that pose and into a jump and then coming down, right? So the reasons why it's important for games is because for games, sometimes in Dark Souls, for example, you want to see the attack coming so the player has a chance to react, right? And also a reason in fighting games you want to have that is for telegraphing. You want to be able to see where the kick is coming from, where the energy is going, where the energy might go to, right? And it's also visually appealing, indicates clear action from the player, and also it gives realism and physics to it, because you can't just go to from standing to a full stretch pose here. You have to have the energy come from somewhere, right? So that's exactly where anticipation plays in. So in Street Fighter 4, for example, we have this great stand heavy kick from Cammy. Very cool looking normal, very unique normal. This is obviously based on her Street Fighter 2 animation. It's a little on the cartoonish side because Street Fighter 4 kind of leans in slightly to the cartoonish side a little bit. But very cool, you know, works very well. I've broken down the poses for you so you can see the anticipation. So basically once she goes from standing, she goes into this crouch motion. And you can see the motion blur is very faint on this. So you can see the animation clearly, right? So you can see the hands go down again further. And you can see her kind of pressing down. You see the elbow bends more and her hand is fully flat. And now the leg starts to come up. So you see the leg pretty quickly, right? The back leg. And you see the leg now spinning back, and you can see her hips are twerking to this side to basically line up this kick here. And so you see the leg coming up and the leg going back. So this is the pose right before the kick actually connects. So there's a lot of wind up and a lot of power in this leg. It's because it's going to swing around and kick the opponent, as you can see, right? So now seeing those frames, you can actually feel the kick right before it connects, right? You see that little bit of power? Right? It's all because of the body torquing and then the leg going back and also making a clear silhouette as well. So you can see exactly where the kick is coming from, what the body is doing. And it's very clear, I think by this point, that a kick is coming. So pretty early on you can see that's what is happening. And this also causes Cammy to spin around. And that's why you can see her body's torquing around, because that what causes her to go around, right? If you didn't have that in the anticipation, it would look a bit weird why she would be spinning, because there's no pre-motion before that to cause her to spin, right? It's a thing called torque, which you can look up yourself. But in Street Fighter 6, we have the very similar stand heavy kick animation, and it looks a little weird, right? It's pretty quick. I think it's about the same amount of frames, but what's the problem with it, right? So I broke it down. You can see the frames here. So it's very similar. The difference, though, is that she doesn't plant her hand until the very last pose before the frame before the kick comes out. So you could assume, if you're just looking at these poses on its own, you could misconstrue this as she's falling down, she's going down to take a nap, and she's also bent and twisted very awkwardly here at this point. I know the motion blur is a bit hard to see, but it's very awkward and unclear what is happening, right? And she kind of maintains this like monkey arm pose here, right? And she doesn't plant her hand until the kick is already out. So where is the force coming from, right? Also, you notice there's no torque in her body. This kind of more looks like, I don't know if you played Killer Instinct, but Glacius has a double kick in Killer Instinct Gold that's like a two-hitting double kick. So mostly you plant your hands on the ground and you push off and then you do like a kick. That's what this looks like, right? And where is the leg? The biggest problem, where is the leg? The leg, all the weight is on this leg right now. And with this pose here, the weight is actually shifted over to the middle now. So now she's off balance. She should be falling down right now. Now she turns her leg here to balance her leg, or her pose out. But then it's already too late, and where's the kick coming from? So the anticipation for the kick is this little line here. So it's not only not dragging, it's not only not going like this, you can see the foot coming and the leg coming, like you can't see the bend. It's turned away from camera, so you can't even see how long the leg is, you can't see the arc or the path of where the kick is coming from. And then the other leg is just coming up for support, and you don't see much power because the pose change is very subtle here. There's like a slight, it's almost straight, she's not really squashed down that much, and you can see she's basically barely changing poses here. And then that's why you get this here. And what's even weirder is that she spins around still. So she's generating such fast movement in a rotation value without the anticipation indicating or showing this motion originally. So that's why it looks a little jarring, and it looks weird that she's spinning around versus if you see Cammy spin here, you know where that energy is coming from because it's coming from her spinning around at the beginning. Right, so very, very important to show anticipation and to communicate clear anticipation of where energy is coming from, where it's going, and then when you perform an attack or finish an action, you need to finish that energy, right? So here's an antic comparison. I put the two poses side by side, and which one clearly communicates the best pose, right? You can see a clear leg where the kick is going, most likely, right? And you can see the kick. I have no idea where this is going. This looks like she already finished, if anything, or she's looking like she's trying not to fall. And you can see here she's perfectly balanced. Her center of gravity is right over her hand, which is where the power is coming from. Her fist is clenched, so she's got the power. She's like ready to like strike, right? And you can see the other leg for balance, just to keep her sturdy and ready to kick. And here, just very off balance, very floppy. So very unfortunate. Now, what is appeal? So appeal, basically, a good example of appeal is looking at something in silhouette. So basically, if you look at a pose or an action, it should be very, very clear what is happening, and there should be no confusion on what this is. So, for example, this guy drinking from a glass and drinking some fluid that we're unaware of. You can see with this pose here, if you make it a good trick in animation is to see if your pose works, just make it black and white. And if you're in CG, what you can do is turn off the lights in your CG scene, and you'll actually make it black and white for you. And you can just put a white background, and then it helps a lot. So you can see this is very unclear. Like with the drawing, you can kind of tell that obviously that he's drinking something, but in black and white you can't tell. This is ambiguous, right? You don't know what he's holding. You're not sure what his hands are doing. You don't know what part of his face there. You can probably guess this is a nose, and you're not sure. But with this silhouette here, just turn to the side a little bit, you can clearly see there's a fluid going in. That's his mouth, his nose, right? This is cartoon. And especially when you do things like cartoonish designs or stuff that is off proportion or off kilter from like the norm of what humans look like, it's even more important to have good silhouette, because you know, if the human body looks different, like this character for example, you need to make it as clear as possible to your audience within the pose, especially in 2D animation, because you're going to see these drawings for a lot longer than you would in CG animation, unless you're animating on ones, which is a rare thing nowadays. So for example, a great example of this, early Street Fighter V had amazing animation. Season 1, Season 2 as well, amazing animation. Zeku, Minot are great standouts, but the Season 5 cast in Season 1 were amazing. Vega, of course, Bison, Ryu, Ken, all amazing stuff. Obviously there's some modeling stuff here, clipping, things like that, but their animation, super solid. Love it to this day. And Bison's a great example, so he has a great menacing pose, an auto pose that he stays in for the whole game. This is a massive rework of his old poses, and I think it really worked. It sells the boss feel of his aura. And his normals work well with it too, you know? He's got very boss-like normals. He's got a claw grip here when he goes for the light punch chop to the chest. He's got a clenched fist here for his rib punch here that he flexes. And for his stand heavy punch, fist clench, very strong pose, steps forward into it and goes for the psycho swipe here, right? So each pose very clearly communicates a line of action, right? You can see the slight S curve here because of the line here. You can also see he's firmly planted in his pose here, and the heavier the normal is, so this is light, medium, heavy if you guys haven't played it, you can see the step forward here. He's going really into it. He's really trying to hurt you in every single attack, right? Which is very key. So even if a character is crossing their arms and is looking like this, you still want to make sure that when they're striking, they have a clear pose that communicates power, and that they're actually trying to hurt you. They're not doing it half-assed, and they are aware of how to fight, right? And none of this is broken. This is very, proportionate. All the poses are dynamic and very appealing. And they also obey physics and body mechanics and all that sort of stuff. So really, really cool to see. And like I said, Street Fighter to me at peak quality and style is when it's stylized realism. So leaning more into the style, less into the realism, but still keeping that physicality of, humans fighting, basically. Yeah, very, very awesome to see. Now, Street Fighter 6. This is JP. Motion blur is terrible in Street Fighter 6, so it's quite hard to clip poses. But he has a very similar pose to Bison, which I actually like. I like this regal, hand behind the back thing, right? And it's beautiful to see these kind of poses because it communicates clearly what the kind of character this is, maybe what sort of attitude they have towards the fight, towards the other person, how they think about life in general. So having poses like this are clear and communicative, so they're great. I love that. However, when you get to the normals, he still keeps his hand behind his back and he doesn't let go. So this is his light punch, if I had to guess. The game is not out yet, so we can't see his actual normals. But I believe this is a light punch, so basically he's turning his staff or his cane around and he's doing like a little swipe, right? Looks extremely casual. Looks like this would not hurt anybody. This looks like a love tap. And the reason for this is because he's keeping his arm behind his back and it just looks like a slight gesture instead. So this is not very clearly communicating that it's a strike. He could also be pointing to something if you had to pause on this, right? What actually would make this sell quite a bit is if you had his arm off and it actually swung around and, using the other arm, like this arm here, to like support himself and to emphasize the power. So you could like make a claw like we saw earlier with Bison, right? Our music died. Let's turn that up again. Yes, continue playing. There we go. You can see like the claw pose here, right? Some sort of intent that like, I'm trying to hurt you. I'm trying to be as strong as possible to do damage, right? And this is a very weak thing. Posture is okay. It's very straight up and down, right? So there's no torque in his spine. There's no twist because you want to see your torso twist if you're especially doing a strike, right? And I believe this is his medium punch, and this is an even worse offender, unfortunately. So also very similar, slightly more turn in the torso. You can kind of see like his vest line here. This is a good way to check if you're an animator. You can like, based on the costume, if you see like any straight lines going down, like a vest or a blazer or a suit, it's a good way to tell like your line of action. So you can see this one here. It kind of makes an S shape, sort of like kind of like a C. But the biggest issue here is that his hand is still behind his back. It's still behind his back, or you can't see it. I'm not sure because this is motion blurred out. But his shoulder is broken. First of all, his shoulder is like this. Like, have you ever hit anybody with this kind of posture? I don't think so. And not only that, he's torquing his wrist like this, which makes so little sense. And if you watch the video of it, he's going like this. How do you hurt someone like this, right? Makes no sense, right? If you're gonna hurt somebody and you're trying to swing it around, you're going to go, "Hua!" Right? And you're gonna have your hand back for support because you just swung your sword around or your cane around, right? So you want to have as much support because that energy you did from swinging around is gonna spin your body around. So to avoid your body from spinning around too far and going off balance, you need your other hand for balance, right? That's exactly why you take your hand off of your back when you're trying to fight somebody, right? That's exactly why Bison does this. That's exactly why in Heavy Punch he goes like this to balance himself out, right? Because he's reaching really far, right? It's all about maintaining balance. Balance is super, super important in animation, and as you get better from being a junior animator to being senior, all your poses need to have balance. All animation needs to have balance. If you don't have balance, it looks awkward. In motion, you can cheat that sometimes, but generally where you're going to see the poses the longest, for the longest amount of frames, those need to be balanced. So, and the biggest problem I'm noticing is that it seems like they are learning from NRS, which is the worst thing they could do because they have proven with Injustice 2, Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat 11, that they cannot keep up and do good animation. And you can see they're taking inspiration from Darkseid. Darkseid has the same idea. He keeps his arms behind his back, and even while he strikes, he keeps that hand behind the back. And look at these slaps. Now, Injustice doesn't have light punch, heavy punch. doesn't have 6 buttons. They have 3 attack buttons, so light, medium, heavy, and then they have a special button. But you can see here, like, this is extremely light. This is very floppy, right? These don't look like they would cause blood. These don't look like they hurt you. This just looks like a light slap, right? That's about it. So very, very unfortunate. Now, I want to talk about motion capture because I think this is where all the issues stem from. And in the misuse of motion capture. Motion capture by itself is quite effective and useful. It can do a lot of things like help you rough out animation really quickly, help you iterate a lot faster when you're in the early stages of games. For example, for the game I'm working on at my studio, we did a lot of motion capture early, and even though we had different voice acting much later on in the studio, we were able to change the motion capture from our animation, from doing it ourselves, manipulating the data, all that sort of stuff, and doing pose changes, stuff like that. So you always have to do things like that to plus up animation, even if it's motion capture. Motion capture by itself doesn't look good, and it always looks off in some way or another, whether it's weight, whether it's poses, whether it's motion, whether it's jitteriness and cleanup, right? Because the data is not clean. So there's a lot of stuff you have to do on the side. So Street Fighter 6 has been playing with a lot of motion capture. And we noticed this as well in previous videos. We saw them do it with Rose for the first time, so for Street Fighter 5. And I believe that's the reason we saw a dip in quality in Street Fighter 5's animation in the mid-season, like Season 3 beyond. We saw animations be a lot worse and a lot less appealing. Not every single character, but most characters, there was a drop in quality compared to like Season 1. And as you can see, these actors are clearly skilled at what they're doing, right? But these don't look like attacks necessarily, right? You'd have to go in and add anticipation poses so they look like strikes. But this is the biggest point of contention I have, and this is probably the reason why some of the weight and poses are off in terms of balance. It's that the actors or the people who are helping assist the motion capture are basically balancing the person to not fall over or not tumble or have an awkward motion, right? When they're doing a lot of these crazy movements, right? And the biggest issue with that, and the thing is, I'm not saying it's not good to do, but the problem is that in animation, if you don't realize that's what's happening, you're going to get animation that doesn't look right when they stop, right? So big ups to Capcom for using mocap, but you have to go in and keep your animation principles intact. You have to sort of gamify them, and you can't just use raw mocap as it is or squeeze it and make it tighter. Like, obviously some of these moves look great, Jamie looks pretty cool generally, and as I said before, the cinematic animation is great. Definitely no complaints there. So, gotta keep going. We're not done yet. I'll give you guys an example for myself. So, I animated Thanos. I was one of the few people that animated on Thanos Infinity War. This is my shot actually. We got our motion capture from Josh Brolin, and he obviously is not Thanos. He's not a giant man that's 700 800 pounds. It was like 8 feet tall, so we had to actually keep his basically for this shot, for example, I kept his physics from the feet to his center of gravity. So basically from the waist down, I basically kept his animation, and everything else I deleted because Josh Brolin is not that appealing when he was doing this action, so I had to change it myself to make it more appealing, more powerful. That's exactly why I have this here. And you make it appealing because it's a comic book movie, right? It's VFX, right? And how long did I spend on this? So basically, I think over the span of 6 months, this is the first shot I got assigned when I was at work. And it didn't take 6 months to animate, but it took 6 months of iteration of, getting different notes from Marvel, getting different notes from my director, and doing multiple versions of it. We had different placements of where Thanos would be, maybe different gestures as well, but this was the one we settled on. And this is obviously Chris's stunt double, not Chris Evans, getting thrown up. It's actually on a wire, so they're pulling a wire and like swinging him up. But it turned out really well. And this is one of my favorite shots that I've ever done. It was a very fun experience. Yeah. And so in closing, I am very excited for Street Fighter 6. Like I said before at the beginning, the animation is amazing. And the cinematic department, however, the gameplay animation is leaving a lot to be desired. And I fear that we might have seen the last days of Capcom being amazing in terms of animation. Like Third Strike, for example, I think we might not ever get to a point now where we see this kind of beautiful animation work. And in Street Fighter 4, it was an issue because this is the first time that they jumped into 3D, right? And you can see a similar thing happening with King of Fighters 14. That was their first time going to 3D. But now with King of Fighters 15, their animation looks excellent. The issue with 15 right now is basically just the lighting doesn't affect the character models, and they don't do motion blur. So they don't do any motion blur at all. So some really fast motions look a bit poppy. But animation-wise, it's super solid and very great to look at, so I recommend studying KOF 15 animation as well. But the thing is, with Street Fighter 4's animation, they actually were able to learn a lot of lessons, and that's why I mentioned in Street Fighter 5, they implemented a lot of great ideas. If you study Season 1 Street Fighter 5 animation, you'll see a lot of foundational stuff in Third Strike in there. And it's very amazing to look at, very cool. That's why I love Vega so much, right? He's amazingly animated, beautiful character, just amazing, right? Very organic, exactly. And to be honest, I wished that the games that they would look at for inspiration on animation or ideas to try for their next games, I was hoping it wasn't going to be NRS. Hopefully on the content side it would have been NRS, but not in terms of animation, because animation, Capcom was killing it. So it's very disappointing to see them fall so far from grace to me. And I wish they would have taken notes from Arxis, because Guilty Gear Strive, even though I don't like the game that much, like it's a casual fun game for me to play, but I would never get into it competitively. But the animation is goddamn gorgeous. Gorgeous. And I know I'm cheating a little bit. This is like, you know, a creature that's not human-like, but within this frame, there are so many beautiful, foundational, fundamental elements of animation, of appeal, anticipation, and spacing. And it looks amazing every time you play it. Like, I can see why people are sucked into this game, because sometimes when I was playing Zato, and I would lab combos or lab things around, and I would just, for like 5 minutes at a time, I would just, you know, stare at the screen and just repeatedly press normals because they look so cool, and I love seeing them play out, because especially Zato has crazy effects and all that, right? So yeah, I'm very disappointed in Street Fighter 6 in terms of animation, but I'm very excited to play the game. I do enjoy Mortal Kombat and Injustice, so it's not that I can't get used to seeing these animations, but it's going to be a part of me that kind of hurts. So hopefully Street Fighter 7 comes out, they learn these lessons, but to be frank, not enough people are calling them out for it, and people are rewarding that kind of behavior, because, for example, Mortal Kombat 11 won an award, or Injustice 2 won an award for Game of the Year, and it's kind of sad to see because they won also including animation, right? So I don't see a future where we get out of this, except for maybe other companies pushing them to be better. Maybe we get into an odd Bizarro World universe where Mortal Kombat 12 has amazing animation, and Street Fighter 6 is the one with the bad animation, and now we're going to switch all the memes around, so I don't know. We'll just have to see. But thank you, everyone. That was my TED Talk, GDC talk about why Street Fighter 6 animation sucks. Leave a comment on the YouTube video that I'll upload soon, and if you have any comments, please let me know, or anything else you want me to talk about. Yeah, so for you guys in the chat, if you guys have any questions about animation, about what I talked about, anything with Street Fighter 6 and examples that you want me to look at or talk about and analyze, I can definitely do that. This is the Q&A section, so whatever you guys want to ask, feel free. Any comments, whatever. I'll try to read the chat as well, because I didn't see any of them at all. Berserk animation godlike. Yep. Mad organic. Yep. I think with the sprites it's more possible to have those different animations. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. But Guilty Gear is actually CG. It's not sprite animation. It's CG, but they've used a toon shader, which makes it look a bit more anime-like, and they've used a very specific animation method that is used. It's similar to Spider-Verse, actually, that causes this sort of effect. Have I seen the animations in Devil May Cry 5? No, I have not. I have not. I can take a look at that, though, if you guys would like. You can find out. You're welcome. You're welcome, Joey. Do I think Ken's Super Art 2 looks a bit too stiff in Street Fighter 6? I I believe, yeah, I think so. Let me take a look. Let me see this Devil May Cry though. 5. Cutscene. Okay, I'll do gameplay. Because I assume you're talking about gameplay. Ah, I see. Okay. Full walkthrough. Maybe Devil May Cry remastered. May Cry 5. Yeah, I'm curious about the gameplay, to be honest. So let's see. Yeah, and then I'll look at Ken's Super Art 2. I'll see if... I think there's probably videos on it from the beta, so... Okay, this is all cinematic. Let's get to gameplay ASAP. Okay, here's the gameplay. Also, a big difference, too, Arneezy, with a game like this is that it's action-based. So it's not based on a fighting game, but... the motion is fast and snappy. So let's take a look at that, for example. It's going to be hard to frame through because of the motion blur. Yeah, motion blur makes everything difficult to see sometimes. Especially with effects, stuff like that. They all add appeal to the animation, so... Okay, so he's got the sword up. You can kind of see the effect. I can already tell this is probably better. Yeah, you can even see... Okay, so he's got the sword back here. Okay. So I'm trying to see when he starts swinging. We want to get to the first pose that he starts from. And, I mean, this already looks better, to be honest. I think it's just an engine thing. It's not, or sorry, it's an animator thing. Maybe production, maybe the manager, who is the animation director, does not care or notice certain things. They could be a new animation director, so they're unsure about quality. Maybe they don't have much experience. It could be many factors that cause it. Usually when animation is, the bar is low, it's due to the animation director. So if the director doesn't do a good job, or if the person above the director doesn't support the animation director, then it doesn't matter how good the animators are. If they're told not to do certain things, then that's what happens. That's why you get NRS. I have a bunch of friends that worked on Mortal Kombat 11, and they are amazing animators otherwise. It's a lot of the time, it's the pipeline, it's the people above that are causing this. Yeah, these animations look great. I don't even think I need to slow them down. Like, they look excellent to me. A lot of power, right? It looks amazing. Honestly, this is just I think it's just a production. Yeah, I see no problem with this whatsoever. Or the Tatsus in general. So actually, I was curious. I'll talk about that after, but yeah, I have a point about the Tatsus. SF6 move list. I think I can probably find that. Yeah, the cutscenes look excellent too. Yeah, it's not really based on the engine. Engine is usually associated with like graphical quality or like maybe what lighting engines and effects engines they have. And basically how you create the thing is aided and hindered by the engine sometimes. So that's why a lot of times you want to make your own engine, even though it's more expensive to do that. But you can control every aspect because it's the engine that you own, right? That's why before, when they're using Unreal, they have to work with an engine, and they actually have to pay royalties to them for using the engine after you make a certain amount of money with Unreal Engine. So because it is free to download, so you and me can download it for free, never have to pay for it. But as soon as you start making money and you start making a certain amount of money, you have to start paying them royalties for using it. So for a big company like Capcom, it's a lot of the times good idea to invest in your own pipeline in your own engine, because then it makes it cheaper for yourself in the long run, even though it's a lot of work. And that's why some studios just never stray away from using other engines like Unity or Unreal. It's just based on your needs and you know what your long-term goals are, right? But yeah, let's take a look at Ken. We can also look at the Tatsus in the same video, so that's actually perfect. Yeah, and that's a good point, John. So they use a lot of old games as reference for what attacks are, but they fail to understand why attacks work in those games and why attacks don't work in this game. So let's look at the CA though, because that's what we got asked first. I'll try to go in order. So you got special moves here. Thank God for these uploads, because these are really useful to look at stuff. Also to help you learn about characters, stuff like that. And again, I'm not going to say all gameplay animation is terrible, but at best, I've seen they're fine. Like, not, like, offensive and not, you know. So it's this one, right? Jinrai Kaku. So let's frame through this. So we got the kick here. This is actually an actual reference. So the pose is the same. But as you can see here, so this is the problem already. So remember I was talking about anticipation? So the anticipation for this is very small. So the leg is here already. The leg is here. Midway point between here to here, right? And then when the kick comes, it's already here. It's already gone that far. So if you look, I hard bet, if you look at third strike, the leg is back here. And then it becomes to here, right? That pose change, and also the torque of the body. So he's going like this, or he's going like this. The twist is going to be a lot more for a kick like this if you want to make it powerful, right? Especially because this is the first kick. This is the iconic first kick, right? And you can see the body twists a little bit, which is good, right? That's the good part. But I think the leg is not far back enough, so it's weak. And like I said, this is the problem with spacing. So this is evenly spaced, and that's why this kick doesn't feel that good. And these ones are really quick, so let's frame through this. I know the motion blur is making it tough, but yeah, so the leg is down here, is kicking up. Motion blur, motion blur. Yeah, like this kick feels more powerful because it's really fast, right? Yeah, so those look a lot better. And this is the issue where it comes the Tatsu. So you can see this is okay, right? But the leg is basically stuck out, and they're just spinning the character around. So that doesn't work in CG. Yeah, so you can see the kick here. So in one video here, so let's go back to the actual Tatsus, because I want to show you guys that, because that's very important. So try to get a medium. Oh, that's airborne. So not the light kick version. Yeah, so this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So this is exactly what the problem is. So you can see very clearly, so he's spinning around. So this pose is fine, very appealing. This is actually the same Tatsu that they use in Street Fighter 2, right? Same exact pose. The problem is this. So the leg stays straight, following the body every time. And you can see he's just spinning around, and he kicks again, right? So poses are fine, right? It's just the in-between poses don't work. And I'll tell you exactly why. Because if you look at Street Fighter 5 Ken, you know, let's not cheat here. Let's keep it in CG, right? I'll show you the pose that makes the biggest difference. So this is why you're seeing problems. So quality not as good as the Street Fighter 6 video, but that's okay. Hell Wheel, Thunder Kick, Line Breaker, Crush Counter, Hadouken. Let's get medium kick Tatsu because we want enough spinning. Medium Tatsu, perfect. Yep, so this is exactly the problem with Street Fighter 6. So this is the first hit, right? Different pose, obviously, but this is why. This is why this has power and SF6 doesn't. Because he's torquing his body before the kick comes. He's looking to where the kick is going to go, and the leg is dragging. You see the leg? It doesn't come forward here, which is what it does in SF6. It stays back. These 3 to 4 frames, and even here, like right before, it's still dragging back. Like, look how much wind up this has. Still dragging back, and then pow, right? And the body is torquing, and he's looking through his armpit here. And swinging, pow, right? That's power. That's power. You can't just have your legs stuck out and then use the force of the character spinning to create power. You have to emphasize with the body, right? Okay? That's exactly the problem in Street Fighter 6. Okay? Would I say there's a lack of blends in animation, i.e. between knockdown animation and down states, jarring transitions from neutral gameplay to can throw animation? Yeah, I would say so, Joey. I think that's a result of doing... It's kind of difficult, right? Because there's certain things in fighting games, for example, that you have to play as fast as possible because you don't have time to transition, right? So, for example, if a character does like a jab, right? Or like a heavy punch, and if that heavy punch is... Like you can see in Street Fighter 5, for example, the later seasons when they start adding like recovery animation to stuff. So if you don't press a button or you don't do anything after you press a normal, they do like a recovery animation that like settles into place. So sometimes you can't do that. And so the issue comes when you have realistic looking characters performing realistic moves, and the recovery doesn't, what's the word? You don't have time to recover or settle, because let's say the knockdown is only like 10 frames, right? After a throw. You have to get them up, right? So you do it in the get up animation, maybe you do it in the knockdown itself, so you cheat, like some of the animation is part of the knockdown as well. That's also a tactic. So it could be that they're not using blends, and it also could be that they're not cheating with the animation itself to blend properly. Sometimes it's unavoidable, right? When you get certain things like trades, or when you cancel stuff, right? But you do what you can, and I do think with all the stuff that Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 6 doesn't do, that Street Fighter 5 does, for example, in the early seasons, that could just add to the awkwardness, right? Because if animations already don't look good and they suffer from appeal, poor spacing, poor anticipation, then you're going to get other issues that are more jarring, right? That's why sometimes Mortal Kombat games look a lot more jarring, because of their foundational animation issues. That's why in Guilty Gear, when stuff looks awkward, it still looks fine, because everything around that is amazing, right? Foundationally. So that's the big thing to always look at, right? Do I have commands written so I know what your arguments are? Yes. So I just did the whole presentation. So I'll post the YouTube video after this. So I'll link it on my Twitter. So follow me on Twitter if you aren't already, or check my Discord as well. I'm going to post it there. So yeah, I have a whole list of all these arguments and full presentation. Yeah. Why would the knee be a bit more down? Why would the knee be a bit more down? I'm not sure what that references to. Maybe you can clarify. Neil foreplay can't just jump in. Well, we already did the video, Rob, so don't worry. In 6 feel way better, like leagues above. But what do you mean it feels better? That's what I want to understand. Do you mean that it's just the hit stun, like for example, we can just play this at normal speed. Or here, let's go back. Because the thing is, you have to consider, animation can be bad, but hits can feel better, right? You have to understand that that's also a thing. Like, maybe you like the hit effects of Street Fighter 6 better than SF5. I see a lot of people say that. Like, the block effects, the sound effects, the way the camera shakes is better. Like, for example, here, you can see this. Very common. Let me see. Yeah, so with heavy kick, for example. So I don't know if you guys know this. If you frame through heavy buttons or certain special moves, so look at how far the leg goes back, by the way. This is amazing anticipation. Right? So even the pose right before is here. And then bam, right? Straight across. It's amazing, right? But what's really cool, you can kind of tell, so this is the moment the hit is about to happen, the frame before, right? So what happens in games, what they do is they add camera shake, vibration to the opponent, and they do like a hit effect and a sound effect, right? So you can see this here. So the pose changes immediate, so Nakali goes, right? And this hit effect happens on the hit and also the strike as well. So both the hit effect of being hit and then the hit effect of connecting a hit, right? So this helps with hit confirming for games, but it's also just visually appealing and makes it sell the impact, right? And the effect goes through, and you can see the camera. You guys, I don't know if you noticed, it's very subtle, but you can see the camera start to pan a little bit to this side, and it zooms in. You see this zoom here? It's zooming in, zooming back, zooming in, zooming back, and also Nakali, you see he's vibrating. See this little vibration here? This is what sells impact after you have good animation, right? So this is what makes stuff feel really good, really strong, right? And obviously, depending on the move that you do, you're going to have a different amount of screen shake, different amount of hit stun, different amount of vibration, all that sort of stuff, right? It's very, very nuanced and very appealing. It feels better because muscle jiggle from momentum, it looks like close to, way better than SF5. It's phenomenal, but that Tatsu example you did, I agree. Yes, exactly. So, because you have to remember, Street Fighter 5 does not have a muscle system, right? This is all, every muscle that you see, and also shout outs to Glenn in the chat. Thank you, bud. If you look at the muscles in Street Fighter 5, all that stuff is going to stay there. Like, you're not going to see any changes in shape. You're not going to see any changes in deformities. Usually, I don't believe in analyzing Street Fighter 5, unless there's an example you guys can show me where like they actually squish the character's hand or make the character's hand bigger. I know they do it for Abigail, and I know they do it for Guile's super, like when he does like the flex, he's like, Sonic Hurricane, right? And he does like the big flex in V-Trigger, and then his arms get massive. I don't know if that was toned down from the trailer, but I remember the trailer was very, very large. But if you can see in like Street Fighter 6, for example, if we look at Ryu's move list, because he has a good example of this in his super, right? So let's see if we can get to his super here. Should have some water. I didn't have any water at all. maybe, right? Actually, I found out years ago that Capcom does not for their titles like Resident Evil, Street Fighter, they don't hire anybody unless they're in Japan. So I have to work in Japan, basically. So Ryu's super critical art here, or super art 3. What's really cool, and what probably adds to the effect, is that the facial expressions are really crazy good. Like because you can see the flesh and the muscles on the face. This is something like Street Fighter 4 did this a lot with their ultras. When they start up, you can see the character's expression go like bug-eyed or like, oh my god, you're gonna hit me, right? But it looks very cartoony, right? But here, because of the RE engine and the rigs that they have, they're able to add these like fleshiness to the face a lot more, right? So when Luke gets hit here, let's try to go back right before he gets hit here. Yeah, so he does this kind of thing, which is what I was betting. So he's getting hit here, and he's puffing up his cheeks, right? Could go like, because he's filled with air, and the air gets knocked out of him, right? Or the wind gets knocked out of him. They could have sold this better too. See, even this I could critique. So like they're going like this, and then they're going to but it's better for selling if you go you have to do the ooh, right? Because you go ooh, or like wah, right? If you do that, that's going to be a lot better, right? And yes, exactly what you're saying, Curly Fries. The veins, bicep, yes, exactly. All that stuff sells this kind of stuff, right? But you can see like his muscles here, the veins, the muscles flex, and like for example, when I animated on Thanos, that shot you guys saw earlier, we had muscle controls and like muscle sim. So automatically, if you would go like this, it would flex the arm muscle automatically, which is really, really cool. And obviously, like the simulation guys and the VFX guys would add to that. So like, for example, when Thanos would like crush Iron Man with a moon, he was like flexing extra hard. He was already flexing, and then he flexes extra hard to go and do it, right? So you can see this looks very cool, right? Very detailed. And they just feel fleshier, right? Because they feel more like they're real people because of the detail of the graphics, right? The details of the muscle system, the VFX, right? And the textures, what they can do now with the textures. So the reason why I think maybe you think that Street Fighter 6 feels better in terms of the hits and all that sort of stuff, it's not anything to do with the animation side. It's to do with the graphical quality, the polish, and the muscle simulation, right? So that's why it can feel better, but it can feel even better if they just implemented a lot of the stuff I was talking about with Street Fighter 5 early animation, and then still on top of that, it would look like the best animated fighting game out today, honestly, aside from maybe Guilty Gear Strive, right? But yeah, if there's any more questions or comments, feel free. But I think pretty much wrapping this up, unless you guys have more you want me to discuss or analyze, talk about in terms of animation. I did mention, that NRS unfortunately is inspiring a lot of people in weird ways, and it's sad to see that Capcom is taking animation inspiration from them when they should be, taking inspiration in terms of content, which I think they are. That's why Street Fighter 6 is filled with features. They have a world tour mode, tons of great training mode options, right? Everything seems excellent so far. In terms of the game itself, I don't know if you guys have played the demo and played the bullfighting mode, but it's actually really fun. It makes it way more enjoyable for people who are not good at fighting games because you don't have to do flashy combos to win. You just have to knock them down 5 times, So even just a sweep or a throw works, right? And then the bull adds some like randomness to it. Like that's going to be such a fun thing to do. I'll probably host a tournament for that kind of mode, just to have as many people join for fun. And, you know, it's just going to be very good. Walk forward looks so weird. Let's take a look. We need him to do a normal. I think in the normals he was walking forward. No, he's jumping here. Let's go further back. Okay, so he's going to throw. Yeah. Let's see this walk. So he's taking a step forward, so that looks correct. Oh, no, I see. The problem here is that his leg, yeah, it's after he's in motion. That's weird. Yeah, I see it now. I see it now, Damien. Yep. So he's basically, yeah, the problem here, okay, so when you move in real life, your body doesn't move first. Your body initiates the movement, but you step first and then your body moves, right? It kind of happens at the same time, but it's kind of like the step happens first. Your body indicates the movement first, your feet go there, and then your weight catches up, right? That's exactly what it is. Should be a playable character. Dude, Geki is actually in the Street Fighter 6 comic they released for one frame. He's fighting Ken, but it's a flashback scene, so Geki might not show up in Street Fighter 6. They keep referencing him though. I want to see, okay, if they put Geki in the game, I'm going to be way happier than if they put Vega in, honestly. I don't care if he's low tier, top tier, whatever. I'm picking him. I have to, right? It's my namesake. Yeah, and on top of that, with Ryu walking, like, there's no change really in the upper body, right? It's mostly in the lower body here, and it's mostly in the bounce. So that's kind of a problem here. But he looks focused. I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of this when he's walking, which if you add a little bit, it kind of works. This is another thing I can probably mention too. There's something called the uncanny valley in animation, right? So when you're working with anything CG, especially in games, it's not as much of an issue, but when you're watching films, like when I was doing Thanos, for example, he is not a real character, right? He's not a real person, right? So there's certain things that people do. Like, for example, if I just stared into the camera deathly, like with no expression, dead stare, you would still know I'm a person, right? Because I'm fleshy, you can see me, I've been talking for the last 10 minutes, right? You just know I'm a person, right? The difficulty with the uncanny valley is that you need to do things that humans wouldn't actually do in real life. That's why when you use motion capture data for like faces and stuff like that, there's stuff that just looks really off because you can't just do what people would do to make a CG character feel believable. That's why for Thanos, for example, we had like 50 different controls for his face, where you had different muscles, and like we had like temple flex, we had temple pulse, we had cheek flex, we had nose twitches, we had eyebrow flexes, stuff like that. We had muscles in the jaw and in the upper lips here and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff you need to do to keep the face alive, to make them feel real. Even though humans don't do that if they do the same performance, you need to do that for characters that aren't real because it makes them feel more real. And that's what the uncanny valley basically means. Throws seem off. Yeah, seems overly mocap, lacks blend of knockdown. Chun's throws are a good example, or Luke's forward throw. Actually, I do have a video that someone sent me for reference of Chun's throw. And actually, I have it on my animation player, so I can frame by frame it perfectly. So yeah, her throws here, you can see this bad pro wrestling choreography. That's a good metaphor. I thought Zangief's pile driver looks very awkward too. It just looks like they stuck them together for the pile driver, and then they just spun the character around, like, and then dropped them down. I haven't frame by framed it, but that's my guess. So yeah. Actually, wait. We want the full thing to play. The full thing. So So this is Chun-Li's throw. Yeah, that looks very bad. But let's find out why. So she jumps up. That's all good. Goes for the throw. Transition is fine because obviously air throw is going to slightly pop over frame. So she drags his, from the motion blur here, she drags his arm, right? Upper body. And she's not spinning that much, right? She's kind of pulling like this, right? So you're just pulling them down, right? And then he's about to fall down. And then what pulls him over? Oh, so she grabs his back and then throws him forward like this. Yeah, there's not much drag here. Yeah, you can see here, so he's basically maintaining this posture here. So you see, okay, this is the problem. I figured it out. So this is the problem. She pulls him down here with the arm, right? But then the energy doesn't keep going fast enough. It kind of just slows down to a pause almost, right? And then all of a sudden she falls faster for some reason. And then he drags. Luke basically stays in the same position, right? He's not really moving that much. And only in the last frame here when she lands, there's even more delay here. And then starts to slowly come around and gets launched, right? Look at how slow. Look at how slow this transition is. Okay, remember I talked to you about spacing? This is even spacing. Look at this. Here, contact. Right? What the fuck? What the fuck is that ugly shit? What the fuck is that? Ugly ass timing and spacing. Like, why does it take that long to throw the motherfucker, right? This should be 1, 2, 3, and then 5, boom. Like instantly. Like almost instantly. Like he should, from as soon as she throws, he should have gone flying in like 2 frames. Like you see a frame here and a frame there. Just pew pew. Like from here to here. Like instantly. And then you sell it in the weight here. So you can see they're selling it here. He's bending his spine backwards to show the impact. So they're clearly selling it in the follow through, right? It's just what the hell? Yeah, it just doesn't work with the actual throw. And this is her regular throw. And it's the same problem. It's the same problem. Yo, Scarlet Zero, what's going on, bud? Have I seen Geef's jumping heavy kick? Atrocious. Actually, someone did send me a video. But yeah, if you look at, just to finish my point here, you can see Chun's throw here. It's the same problem. Grabs the arm, spins. Okay. Off balance Cammy, which is good because she's supposed to be off balance because she's thrown. But she kind of recovers perfectly here, right? What would have been cool is if they kept the motion going, and that's why there's so much power for her to throw. So, which makes me suspect this is motion capture that has been heavily fucked with by the actors and the directors. Like, remember you saw the Jamie footage of them holding the actors in place? I think this is a symptom of that. That's why there's no overshoot here. So once the drag of Cammy happens here, she already finds her balance. And the problem with this kind of thing is that she needs to go further. She needs to go to the right. You can't just stop if you've been pulled. Unless someone is holding you and you don't animate after the fact because you don't realize that this is a problem, right? And then she's spinning her around, which is cool, but then look at this. Like, so from here to here, very slow, very slow. Look at how slow. Look at how slow. And even the spacing is. Like, guys, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, okay, I'm gonna exaggerate for a second here. Wile E. Coyote. Can't even spell. Like, okay, I know this is a cartoon. But I want you to understand. Let's see where he actually gets hit into something. swear there's gonna be one if we find it. If you guys haven't watched Looney Tunes ever, I highly recommend you go back to it because it's amazing. Oh, here we go. Oh, you don't see it. That sucks. Oh, here we go. We're gonna get one here. It's perfect. Yeah, perfect. This is one of them. Okay, we're gonna go back a few frames, maybe 5 seconds. This is power, right? Boom, boom, right? 1 frame for a cartoon, right? You can't do 1 frame in CG and realistic CG anyway. So you have to sell it in either the anticipation or you sell it in the After Effect here, which is they do, right? They sell it with these vibration lines here. They sell it with that. This is powerful. Like, watch this play in normal motion. Bow. 1-to-1, right? And then he peels off. I think he actually dies here. Yeah, he does. There's some moves that almost look identical, yeah. But like I mentioned before, it's the anticipation that's missing and certain foundational understandings that they don't have, right? You got the game pre-ordered? Yeah. I haven't pre-ordered yet. I probably won't. I might get it from a third-party site, to be quite honest. But let's look at... Actually, I think someone sent me Geef's jumping heavy kick. Let me double-check here. Zangief drop kick. So this one, I'm not sure if it's bad animation yet. So this one here, right? Yeah, so the kick itself is fine, I think. He's lifting up, getting really tight. This is called squash and stretch, by the way, when you like contrast a pose like this. When you squish in and then you stretch out, right? It's a principle that happens with the bouncing ball. So you can see this looks good. This looks good here, right? Kick is coming, the toes bend back. You can see the toes like arching back a little bit, right? That means that's squash and stretch and dragging. And then he stretches out. He doesn't go past though. He kicks out, but his feet don't go past the point and come back like we saw in Street Fighter in Ryu's crouch medium kick, for example, right? Kind of goes straight. The pose is also kind of awkward. Like, I don't know why this arm is behind here. It looks a little awkward. And then, but it's starting to fall, And contact. Contact's okay, yeah. Hit stun is cool. But then it comes back like this. So, big problem with this, though. I think it's the choices they made, because there's also not much contrast here once it transitions. He kind of maintains the same hand pose, and he just kind of goes like this. But if you drop kick someone, have that hit be really strong, and then break out of it into like, oh, like you're catching yourself, right? Because it looks like he's supposed to catch himself and fall down. But then this transition happens. I guess they wanted to make it so that there's not much recovery, but this is a weird choice to do, right? Yeah, so I think that's what it is. They wanted him to not be punished for doing a jump heavy kick. So this is, I think, this is a finessing thing that they like doing now, where they show a block animation instead of the hit animation. Like if it goes through, like you know how Ryu in Street Fighter 5 does like a punch and it stops here, right? And then recovers instead of like going through if it misses. So this is the kind of symptom that they're going for, but which is cool. I think it's good because it helps with hit confirming. It's visually cool and interesting, right? But the execution on this, I think, is very odd. I think you could have instead, if I had to animate this as a task, right, for my game, I would change the hands so he's already trying to catch himself, and then the flip happens faster. Because he's a heavy man, right? So if you only have like this amount of frames to get him back on the ground, make him land somewhat gracefully, maybe, or just like a little more roughly, right? Because I know you want to sell that he's heavy. I know you want to sell that it's a blocked drop kick, right? And this is how drop kicks kind of recover, right? And the idea is cool, but the execution is just the weight is, yeah, like this doesn't need to happen. Like just have him fall faster here. And I get it because they only had a few amount of frames for the time it takes for him to fall, right? Because you do the hang time there because you want to sell the weight. So it's a tough pickle to be in, to be honest. It's a really tough pickle to be in. But I don't think the issue is that he's doing this kind of thing. I think it's just how they handled it, unfortunately. And this is awkward for the animator too. Like, if you only have this amount of frames to sell a heavy ass character falling like that, it's just you're asking for a disaster, right? Damien says, I think the fidelity of the animation was heavily affected by somewhat realistic look of the game and building more realistic character. You almost expect them to move a certain way. I think they struggle with that balance. Yeah, I agree. I think if they if they leaned into the stylistic realism, it would look a lot better, and you could get away with certain stuff like this. That's why if you're gonna go down this route, you have to be very careful in what you do in terms of a move, right? Yes, you have to exaggerate stuff still. Yes, you do things that are, that a normal person wouldn't do because you're doing moves like a hurricane kick, stuff like that. But that's why if you have good animation fundamentals and you do things like good anticipation, good spacing, good appeal, you can make stuff seem believable even though this is a cartoon and all that sort of stuff, right? So it's the hard balance, right? But yeah, I'll post. You know what I'll do? I think I'll take your opinion on this, you guys. But do you prefer if I put this all as one YouTube video, or do you want the question and answer portion, like this section here, to be a separate video from the main presentation? I think probably one whole video, and I'll make timestamps for you guys, just so I keep it all under one thing, so I don't have to make people click 2 different videos. I don't care about being supported on YouTube. I don't care about being popular, whatever, fuck else. I just want people to understand why the animation is not as good. Yeah, one video, right? Okay, I think I'll do that then. But yeah, I just want people to understand why I care so much about animation, why it's important to have good animation, and hopefully if you've learned something about animation today, I think my job is done. I just want people to appreciate good animation as much as possible and to be better educated and have a better eye on when you see bad animation. Maybe you can now pinpoint why something is how it is. And if you guys ever want animation feedback, feel free to DM me on Discord, send me on Twitter. I don't mind reviewing stuff. I love looking at animation all day anyway. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. And again, thanks a lot for all the support, all the views, of course. I'll see you guys on the streets because I love Street Fighter in general. I do enjoy Street Fighter 6. I really enjoy the gameplay. I think a little bit more than SF5, but yeah, it's gonna be a good journey, I think, and I hope to be on the journey with you guys. So thanks again, as always. Here, let's hold some.